my darlings, how's it going? My name is Craig and welcome to a Dinosaur Deck profile. So, I've gone through about 10 or 12 different builds of this deck in the last few days or so, and I've really been doing nothing but testing this deck as much as I can, and I'm very happy with my current build. I've gone from anywhere from, the standard 40 cards up to 48 cards, and I've tried a whole bunch of different techs in the deck, from Summon Amongst to Master Change 2s to running Rescue Rabbit and not running Rescue Rabbit, and just a whole bunch of different stuff, and I've finally gotten comfortable with the deck. This is definitely the most consistent build of the deck that I've managed to put together, and it definitely hasn't failed me yet since I've been playing this particular variant. So hope you guys enjoy the deck profile, and as always, we're going to do the main deck profile first with all the ratios and numbers of what cards we're running, and then we're going to move on to the explanation segment where I actually explain all of my choices. So without further ado, let's get started. So starting out with the monsters, we are running 2 Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, 3 Soul-Eating Oviraptor, 3 Miscellaneousaurus, 3 Petit Pteranodon, 3 Baby Cerosaurus, 2 Megala Smasher X's, 1 Tyranno Infinity. That's it for the dinosaurs, and for the rest of the monsters, we are running 3 True King Lithosagum the Disaster, 1 Fire King Avatar Kirin, and 1 Fire King Avatar Yaksha. And that's it for the monsters. Moving on to spells, we have 3 Lost World, 1 Fire King Island, and then of course 3 Terraformings to search out our field spells. Then we have 3 Fossil Dig, 3 Instant Fusion, 3 Unexpected Die, 2 Twin Twisters, and the last 2 cards of the deck, 2 Pot of Desires. We don't run any traps in the deck, and yes, this is a 42 card main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we have 3 Lagia, 1 Dolka, 2 Totally Awesomes, and of course the Bahamut Shark, 1 Abyss Dweller, 1 Diamond Dyer, 1 Castell, 1 Ragnar Zero, 1 Utopia, and 1 Utopia Lightning. And for instant fusion targets, we have 1 Rare Fish and 1 Norden. That's all of the cards. Let's move on to the explanation segment. Okay, so let's start off by addressing the elephant in the room. Fire King Island, and of course our Fire King search targets. So Fire King Island, if you're not familiar with the effects, it's a field spell, and the only effect we really care about is during your main phase, you can destroy 1 monster in your hand or you control, and if you do, add 1 Fire King monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use 1 effect of Fire King Island per turn, and only once that turn, so you can't abuse that by just keep popping stuff in your hand. That, of course, is to pop our baby dinos, whether they be Baby Cerosaurus or Petit Pteranodon. We can pop them in hand, search one of our targets, and get the baby effects to summon something like an Oviraptor and kick off our plays. So that interaction is obviously amazing, searchable with terraforming, which makes it quite consistent even though we only run 1. But on top of that, the targets that we search actually have decent synergy with the deck. So Yaksha, if he's destroyed and sent to grave, we can destroy 1 card in our hand or on our field. Although that's pretty good, I actually prefer the effect of Kirin here. So Kirin, if you're not familiar with his effects, if he's destroyed and sent to grave, we can send 1 fire monster from our deck to our graveyard. So if you don't want to draw your other target, you can send Yaksha. If you run the Fire True King Agni Mazuji, you can send that to grave if you don't want to draw into it. But most importantly, we can send Miscellaneousaurus from our deck to our grave. So that's obviously fucking amazing, excellent interaction with the deck. However, Fire King Island also has another interaction with the deck that I'm going to show you. If we start with both Fire King Island and a way to get our regular field spell, whether it be through getting this in terraforming or this in terraforming or starting with both of these or 2 terraformings, there's a bunch of different ways you can get both of these in your hand. There are actually quite a few really good interactions you can have with that. Reason being, because when Fire King Island is sent from the field spell zone to the graveyard or banished, a mandatory effect activates to destroy all monsters we control. So one interaction, for example, if you did have a Baby Cerosaurus in your hand, you could of course pop the Baby Cerosaurus with the Fire King Island, it goes to grave, and you get to add 1 of your targets, so we'll just add whatever you want. Now we get Baby Cerosaurus' effect, and we can go ahead and special summon out our vanilla Megala Smasher X. Then we can replace the Fire King Island with Lost World. Fire King Island activates to destroy all monsters we control, and because Megala Smasher X is a normal monster, we can protect it with Lost World. So we can then go ahead and destroy another baby from deck and get ourselves another summon, something like Oviraptor, for example, and then we can get a search and kick off our plays like that. So We haven't even normal summoned yet. That's the craziest part. Fire King Island has so many goddamn good interactions with the deck. It's ridiculous. And on top of that, let's say we draw an unexpected die as well, and we have that baby, we can get both of our Megala Smashers out onto the field when we replace the field spell. And Lost World can protect multiple normals by destroying that number of babies in our deck. So if we had both of these on field, one from Unexpected Die and one from our baby, we could then replace the Fire King Island with Lost World and protect both of these by destroying 2 babies from our deck, and then we get 2 summons. It's absolutely insane. Fire King Island really is just an absolute gem for this deck, and I think people should definitely experiment with it more. Okay, so now I want to cover why I'm running 3 unexpected dies. The reason being, I really don't like summoning Lithosagam to my field. He gets in the way and it bugs me. Now, banishing 3 cards from my opponent's extra deck is fucking excellent, of course, but if I can make a much better board by not summoning him, which quite often I can, then I actually prefer to do that. I would prefer to get 2 extra boss monsters on board instead of summoning him, for example. Even though I get to banish stuff, in my opinion, getting an extra interruption on board or 2 is much better. So the reason I run so many unexpected dies is because Lost World protects your vanillas. How is that relevant? Well, let's say we have Lost World, our unexpected die, summon Megala Smasher, and we have our Lithosagam in hand and another way to get a target to pop with him, for example, Baby Ceresaurus. We can activate Lithosagam in hand and attempt to pop our Megala Smasher and our baby. Now, the field spell can protect this from destruction, so while this is trying to resolve, instead of popping Megala Smasher, you can protect it by popping a baby from deck. Baby Ceresaurus still gets popped, and this doesn't summon itself because it didn't pop both its initial targets, so it actually stays in hand and fizzles. Then we get both the effects of our babies in grave, and we can summon out 2 more dinosaurs from our deck. So those babies can summon 2 more dinos from our deck, and we haven't clogged the space on the field with Lithosagam. Like I mentioned, you just don't want to summon him sometimes. So that interaction, in my opinion, is so valuable to making certain boards and making just really strong first turn plays. I really love Lithosagam to death. He's fantastic, but I actually don't like summoning him very often. That interaction, in my opinion, is very key to making just amazing boards, like I said. So yeah, if you haven't given Unexpected Die a shot and you haven't really tried out that interaction, definitely give it a shot, because you'll actually find that you can make much better boards than you could before because you don't have this guy on the field taking up a space. So another thing I want to cover, because I actually see a lot of people only running 1 of these, I run 3 Instant Fusion. This is absolutely fucking mandatory to making certain first turn boards, and I really don't know why most people are only running 1. This deck is fucking phenomenal with this card at 3. You want to see this card. It extends your plays so much. So as you saw, my 2 targets for this card are Rare Fish and Elder Entity Norden. Norden, I don't think I really have to explain. Making Bahamut Shark and Totally Awesome is of course excellent going first. Even if you go second, for example, you could clear their board and then make this for some kind of defense and interruption. But it's not just for these 2 cards. Norden can help you make so many great cards. You can also make an extra Abyss Dweller on top of what you already had on board with just this 1 card. I mean, that's phenomenal on its own. But apart from those obvious ones, would be summoning Norden and bringing back a baby from grave instead of a level 4. Why is that so good? Well, let's say you already have the Overraptor on board and you have a target in grave. So let's say our Megala Smasher, for example. Now you can use the Overraptor to pop the baby, summon back Megala Smasher, and then you get the baby's effect to summon another dino from deck. So that right there, that interaction comes into play so often. That 1 Instant Fusion extends your plays ridiculously. Don't get me wrong, abusing the field spell with the Overraptor, you know, having the standard play of giving your opponent a token and trying to pop that token and protecting it with the field spell, that is fantastic, but I've actually sort of ascended past that with most of my plays. I actually don't use that standard play very often at all. Most of the time, I'm actually popping my own stuff, like my own babies, for example, to extend my plays with the Overraptor. And I think if more people opened their mind to plays like that and, you know, started really taking Instant Fusion as a serious combo piece in this deck. Because again, most people I see run this at 1. It's insane. I think if more people started taking Instant Fusion as a serious combo piece in this deck, they started having that view, they would start having a lot more fun with the deck and creating more intricate boards. But anyway, I'm just starting to ramble. That's one of the many, many interactions that Instant Fusion can enable in the deck. That's why running it at 3, in my opinion, is really fucking mandatory. Definitely run it at 3 if you haven't already. Even if you only have one target and you don't have the rare fish, it can still be very useful to make sure, absolutely make sure you get this one target, and you can put this back with Totally Awesome. So if you go ahead and make Totally Awesome and it goes to grave, and this is already in grave because you detached it from the Bahamut Shark, you can put this back and your other Instant Fusions are suddenly live. So even if you only have the one target, running 3 Instant Fusion just for the consistency's sake is definitely worth it. So if you're not running 3 Instant Fusion in your Dino build, definitely give it a shot. It really does boost the consistency and the potentness of the deck. So in terms of the extra deck, I'm not sure how much I can really explain. A lot of it is fairly standard. I will explain why I'm running 2 Toad instead of 1. Mostly because, yes, Toad can put himself back, but as I just mentioned, sometimes you don't actually want to put him back. You want to put something like a Norden back, or perhaps even bring a Megala Smasher back to your hand with the effect, so you can, you know, have something to summon next turn if your hand is empty, for example, and try to get certain interactions off of that. But I also do find that most of the first turn boards I make, a lot of people don't initially get around them or can't get around them, and they might have multiple back row, for example. It's always nice to be able to get that second use from Bahamut Shark and have 2 Toads out, because some people, you know, some decks just can't get over your boards sometimes. You know, you usually expect a lot of good decks to get over your boards, but if it's like Paleos, for example, they're just going to be setting back row. So unless they give it up that Bahamut Shark and standby with like a preemptive Dynamecius, you can just get another free Toad, basically, for absolutely nothing, and you get 2 negations of their trap cards. So I definitely think running 2 is probably slightly better than running 1. I would understand running 1, but just for those 2 factors alone of being able to have 2 at the same time and recovering stuff that isn't itself, I do think running 2 is definitely worth giving up that extra space in your extra deck. Apart from that, I have seen some people running 2 Lagia instead of 3. They might run 2-2 of Lagia and Dolka, for example. I tend to make Lagia way more often than Dolka, but I actually value Dolka way more. Having 2 negations of monster effects is fucking amazing. Imagine Crystal Wing on crack. Of course, he doesn't have the attack gain and the you know, self-honesting when it battles a 5 or higher, but getting 2 monster negations is amazing from 1 card. That is insane. If I have this along with a Toad and a Lagia, or this with an Ultimate Conductor and a Toad, I mean, it's amazing. If you just have protection for this guy, he really puts in work, because a lot of meta decks right now have very monster-based strategies. They need to get off their monster effects. So against certain matchups, this is going to be your guy without question. If you wanted to run 2-2, you definitely could. I just find myself making Lagia way more often. But yeah, definitely mix this up to your tastes. Don't think that 3-1 is a standard or anything. And 2-2 doesn't have to be a standard. You can run any mixture of these that you want. I definitely wouldn't run less than 2 Lagia, though. Definitely want to have at least 2 of those. But yeah, 3 Lagia might seem like a little much to some people, but I think it's, you know, a pretty good amount if you make him quite often like I do. I tend to make at least 1 first turn and then 2 another turn. It's usually how I go through my Lagias. I actually do use up all 3 quite often, so definitely don't be shy of running 3 Lagia. Even if you think it's too much, you actually might find that you go through them quite quickly. Everything else in the extra deck is pretty standard. The Ragnar Zero, of course, along with the Field Spell Lost World, is absolutely fucking excellent, because it decreases pretty much, you know, unless your opponent's playing Dinos, it will be decreasing all of their monsters by 5. So Ragnar Zero is always going to be live. You know, fucking amazing card in the deck, of course. Outside of that, there are some optional rank 4s. I would say that the Diamond Dyer isn't mandatory. You can run pretty much whatever you want for that. You also don't have to run Castell if you don't want to. There are some other cards in the deck that kind of solve that problem for you. Like I said, Ultimate Conductor's Hyrano fixes a lot of issues. It's a non-targeting, non-destruction effect that can clear boards if it goes to battle phase and you've got nothing in the way. So you don't actually have to run these 2 if you want to run other cards. You have other cards you prefer to run, you can do that. I would say replace the Diamond Dyer before you replace the Castell if you just have 1 card you want to put in, but yeah, there's a lot of wiggle room in the extra deck. You don't need to run exactly what I'm running. So as for the 2 desires, I guess the question everyone has when it comes to putting desires in a deck is, how often can it punish you? Well, personally, I don't get punished very often at all by this card in this deck because you run so many 3-ofs. You have 3 Oviraptor, 3 each of the babies, you have 3 Lithosagum, you have 3 Miscellaneousaurus, you have 3 Terraforming, 3 of the Field Spell, you have 3 Fossil Dig. I don't even need to go on. Most of the cards in this deck are 3-ofs. So you don't need to worry about playing Desires in this deck if you want to. I actually heavily recommend it. Some plays in the deck, setting up certain boards with, like, you know, 4 interruptions, for example, really does need that extra card, and the Desires just really helps the deck do that. It helps it make those really unbreakable boards. So don't be scared of running Desires in this deck. It won't punish you. In fact, you'll only really get punished maybe, if you ever do, 1 in like 20 games, if even that. It's very rare that you get genuinely punished by this card. So that is my Dinosaur Deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the build. Please give it a shot. I did my absolute best to make this the best build that I can, and I definitely think the differences between this and the standard builds are enough to sort of give Dinosaur players, even if you've been playing the deck for a while, I think it will give you a refreshing experience. So definitely give this profile a shot. Like I said, I did so much testing to really put something together that I think is the best I can do. This is such a consistent and fun deck to play, so give it a shot if you haven't. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, take care and duel on. Oh, and of course, once Maximum Crisis comes out, I will be doing an update on the deck with the True King Field Spell and stuff like that, because the deck will be changing quite a bit, but yeah. Take care and duel on.